But I was like, all right, so how I show up matters. Like, I can't just be a person making my own success. My success has to impact other people. And so I brought that with me to Richmond. I'm deeply aware of where I come from. And the best way to honor Helen and Sammy, my mom and my dad, for what they endured is to do some good with a little bit that I have. So that's how I move through the world. And that's the core of it, just trying to do some good.
Welcome to America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1. I'm your host, Will Melton, and today we are at the Main Street station with Todd Waldo, the Vice President of the new Shockoe Institute. We're going to get into that here in a little bit, but before we do, if you're tuning into this program for the very first time, please visit americashealthiestcity.com to learn about our 10-year community partnership to make Richmond, the entire region, the healthiest in America by 2033. It takes all of us working together on this to make it happen, so we hope we can get your support. Todd, without further ado, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for having me here.
Thanks for having me. Welcome to the Shockoe Institute. Thanks for a little rainy and dreary outside, but thanks for making a trek over and hanging out with us over here.
Yeah, well, this is a beautiful place to conduct an interview, and it's going to be a beautiful place for the Shako project. I want to talk about that in a latter segment of the program, but first, not everybody in Richmond knows you. I think most people do, but we'll start there.
That's kind.
Listening to your accent, I think a lot of folks know you're probably not from Richmond.
I am not. This is my 20th year. So I have really been really fortunate over that time to, be part of some really dope projects, really great events, meet some wonderful people, work with some wonderful people like yourself. But yeah, this is my 20th year. My mom and dad, Sammy and Helen, from the cotton and sugarcane fields of South Carolina to Queens to Jersey, and then eventually found my way here. So 30-some-year engineering career, and I spend my time here as vice president for Shockoe Institute, also at the VCU, the Da Vinci Center. I'm part of that faculty team. I get to do some nonprofit board stuff for the Housing Coalition. I chair that. Africana, we got our film festival coming up in September, and the Richmond Forum. And my daughter is a senior, Thomasdale High School. Go Knights. So yeah, it's a really just dope season for me in my life. I'm 49 and on my 50th trip around the sun.
Yeah, so this is the year you get the honorary Richmonder badge. Like you've been here long enough. You can
I will never say I'm from here. I will never own that. I can't let Queens and Jersey go, but Richmond's home.
Great. Well, I know a lot of people who are kind of come here from the New York area, and we probably don't have time to talk about it, but there's so much that I see similarities between New York and Richmond, but Richmond still has its own flavor.
Yeah.
You've been here a long time. What is it that you think Richmond has that other places don't? It's making it this special place.
Yeah, it's its people. It's always its people. So the reason why 804 is tattooed on my arm, just like 919 is, I went to NC State in Raleigh. And I'm a different person because I was in Raleigh. I'm a different person because I was here in Richmond. And part of that is because of the people who are here. The fact that Richmond is listed as a place to live, a place to visit, a place to enjoy. The people did that. Our chefs, our artists, our entertainers. And so I think that's what makes Richmond so dope. We've got natural beauty. So all the things you can do in and around the river, I think makes it dope. And then Richmond's been at the center of the story of our country. And there are so many historical assets here as well. And I think you can have a good quality of life. You can enjoy yourself. So Richmond does have a lot to offer. Like many other cities, we're stuck in some ways. The big systemic problems, really hard to fix, and do need a little bit more effort, a little more investments, whether that's affordable housing, what's happening with food access, what's happening with transportation, concentration of poverty, and all those things. So Richmond's, not unlike any other place, but I think it's the people here that make it the place that folks want to be, and that's what made it special and makes it special for me.
So engineer by training, now community leader. There's not a linear path to that. Tell me a little bit about what caused you to decide to go into engineering and how that career led to what you're doing today.
So my mom was really focused. I don't know, like when you grow up picking cotton and you do that instead of going to school sometimes, it gives you a certain frame and perspective on the world. And she was real focused, like this kid's going to college. And every decision she made was around placing me to have opportunity. So we had a really good zip code. So in high school, I had computer science. I had my engineering internship. I had sports, a great academic. experience for college prep. So I had all the tools around me. And my black guidance counselor, the one black guidance counselor we had, she's like, this is what engineers do. I thought they ran trains. Like I didn't know. But she's like, this is what engineers do. And I was like, I want to do that. And it was the beginning of me being an artist as well. And so figuring out what I can do with music, what I can do with my voice. And eventually I had a lovely healing journey as a human, and I'm one whole person. And so the engineering analytical part of myself, the artistic creative part of myself are me, and they flow seamlessly back and forth. In college, I started showing up and volunteering. I learned that we got to get people out to vote. So I worked on the Harvey Gantt campaign. So that was my first thing, to be in community, to do a thing to try and get Jesse Helms out of office. But I was like, all right, so how I show up matters. I can't just be a person making my own success. My success has to impact other people and should impact other people. I should be good to wherever I'm planted. And so I brought that with me to Richmond. A lot of my work started up here in the East End in Churchill, where I live, and just kind of expanded from there. But I think it's our responsibility. I'm deeply aware of where I come from. And the best way to honor Helen and Sammy, my mom and my dad, for what they endured, my aunties, my uncles, my grandpas, that's in me. The best way to honor that is to do some good with a little bit that I have. So that's how I move through the world. And that's volunteer service of the board. That's getting people out to vote. It can look a lot of different ways, but that's the core of it. Just trying to do some good.
Do you remember your first stage here in Richmond? What was kind of that first?
I do. Rest in peace and power, Sister Lorna. She put me on stage at Tuesday Verses. I was a poet. I'd written my book and was just moving around. And I didn't know anybody in Richmond, so I was a stranger. And so she showed me so much love and invited me on that stage. And went from that to a lot of others, but that was the first one over Tropical Soul.
Yeah, you are Richmond's default MC for anything cool that's happening. So I expect to see you up on stage whenever I buy tickets to events. So you've kind of, we'll come full circle a little bit here and talk about this new project.
Yeah.
It's been some time in the making, and let's start a little bit with just the Shako project itself. 10 acres down here.
So like I said, I've been here 20 years, and for at least that and probably 30 years, Richmond has been trying to have a lot of conversations and ideas around what do you do here? How do you talk about what happened in this space? How do you honor it? How do you wrestle with it? How do you commemorate it? What do you do? I think the Shako project is a culmination of all that work to craft this really big vision for 10 acres. And the Shockoe Institute is a part of that work. And so I think we are building upon a lot of community engagement, a lot of excitement, but also candidly just a lot of disappointment too, right? As with big things, sometimes they don't progress in the way that people would hope they would. And so that builds distrust. What I'm hoping that we will do is our action and our success will remind people of what's possible. The Shockoe Institute is a national organization, but we're headquartered here in Richmond. And we are dedicated to revealing the enduring impact of American slavery on our shared American experience. So you're sitting in the middle of it right now. So this historic Main Street station, we've got 12,300 square feet here on this bottom floor. So this would be a space for folks to come in, see our long-term exhibit. We partner with local projects. They got to work in Tulsa with their community. They got to work on the 9/11 memorial. And so they are really experts at telling these kinds of stories and creating exhibitions around them. So we'll have a long-term exhibition for folks to experience. But then we'll have another space that allows for people to dive a little bit deeper into the stories, continue the learning. It's our place for collaboration and conversations, and so we'll have events there and create dialogue with one another. So we're thinking through what are the tools and techniques to help people understand that enduring impact and what it means for our lives today, pulling history forward, not just to let it sit in the past, really pulling it forward and seeing how that impacts how we're moving through the world each day.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the history of how this came to be, and then the breakdown of the different entities that will contribute to the project. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in to America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1. Today we are at Main Street Station, and we're talking to Todd Waldo, the VP of the Shockoe Institute down here in what will be the Shako project, a 10-acre project here in the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Three entities, right? So it's the project, or the physical land. You've got the museum, the National Slavery Museum, and the Shockoe Institute. I was trying to understand how these kind of different parts play together. Can you let our listeners know what the difference between the Shockoe Institute and the National Slave Museum is?
Sure, that's a good point. So the Shako project, you're right, has us, Shockoe Institute, the idea for the museum, as well as Lumpkin's Jail, so doing another excavation and creating space around that. And that would be connected to a better commemorative space, just honoring the people who were enslaved here. I think there's a couple of differences. I think for us, so we are in motion. We will open the doors in 2025. We have our team in place, and we have funding in place thanks to the Mellon Foundation. That $11 million investment they made is huge. So I think we stand apart in that we're active and in action. The other aspects are still being designed.
Okay.
And so the Shako project represents a very large plan, and so those other pieces are still being designed and considered, but ours is already in action. So I think that's different. If we do our part right, we create good place. I think we help people understand how to interact with history here, how to be with each other here, bringing activity back to the space. And if we do that right, I think that builds momentum for the folks who are going to work on Lumpkins, who are going to work in a museum, to build on that momentum. But different timelines, different groups of people. So like our work is not directly involved in those other pieces and parts. Those are other teams working with the city. But we're laser focused. And I think, myself, Marlon Buckner is president, Aaron Beck is our director of business ops. So we've got a really good team and a bunch of other people. And I think that activity, when we actually open the doors, I think that's going to build that excitement. And then the other folks who are going to be leading the other aspects and build on that excitement.
So there's a big research component to this. It's about understanding the
enduring impact. So Greg Kimball, many people know him from the Library of Virginia. He retired. We asked him to hang out with us. And so Greg Kimball is our senior historian. And on the antebellum period in Richmond, he wrote the book. Like, nobody knows it better than Greg. And so he's our curator. He's driving how do we tell these stories. What's dope about Marlon, like, he's a historian too, right? And so the two of them, like, it's cool watching the two of them dialogue. Like, I'm actually learning as I'm doing this work. But having Greg on a team is huge. And so, there's a need for this to be about data and facts and truth and evidence. And so Greg's really helping us to make sure that we're doing that.
So obviously it's going to have a huge impact on our community locally. There are going to be folks who come here from all over the country and all over the world. But you mentioned, the national impact and the need to understand, what happened in New Orleans and other places. How do you guys intend to leave this space to go do that work outside of the Richmond community?
So I mentioned Greg. To do this work, we have other advisors with us, and they're all across the country. Our board represents folks from across the country. And so we're already developing that network that gives us two things. That gives us insight into what we're doing inside here to make sure what we're building really reflects Richmond as an epicenter and how things flow from Richmond out to places like New Orleans. But also we can consider opportunities. So how can we show up now in other places given what's happening here? So that network of people, those advisors, those partners give us perspective in both ways. So I think you'll see Shockoe Institute moving through Virginia. There'll be a point we can't do this because there'll be construction here. So we won't actually be able to meet and sit in this place like this. So that'll give us a chance to move through Virginia and I think have some time with people. And definitely figuring out how do we bring people here, as well as how do we take Shockoe Institute into some other markets, some other places.
As we think about the sort of the context of the discourse over the last 4 years in America, what does your organization hope will be the impact of the Shockoe Institute as it comes to bringing folks together and healing? I
think that there is an opportunity to, and I think doing this in a way that's really across the disciplines, not that there is an enduring impact, but how? What actually happened? How is that still happening? What does it look like? And so less the that there is, but how that is. And that's really hard to do. But I think that's the opportunity. And I think bringing people together to understand what that does for our lives day to day, what that does for other communities that we might not be a part of, and what are the opportunities moving forward. I think when we better understand the decisions that were made, we often think about systemic things as like it just happened, like we're just here. That's not true. People got into rooms, they made choices, they made decisions, they had a certain perspective on people, their worth, their value, elevating one zip code over another, one group of people over another, and that drove their decision making. So who we vote for matters. And so I think how we understand the past, its impacts on today, gives us a chance to have a different kind of future. And so that I think that's a really big opportunity. We're a young nation, and so in this level of our maturation, if we can, be a little introspective and think about ourselves and learn a bit from what's been done before, it gives us a shot. And I think our work is really drilling into how there is enduring impact, doing that across disciplines. And that's our artists, that's our intellectual folks, those are our teachers, our parents, our kids, but it's like across all those disciplines, and then bringing back to our communities. And I hope that when people come through the doors and they experience the space, that something happens. Sometimes they're gonna come through and it's brand new knowledge. Others like, yeah, I knew that, I didn't know this part. Mm-hmm. But if that stirs something, just do something with it. Like let that drive. And it might just be in your house. Like it might be in your conversation with your kids, right? But let it drive some action and some response. And I hope they tell us about it when that happens. But that's the ultimate hope, that folks will apply it, use it, in whatever way really makes sense for them and where they are in their life and journey.
So you mentioned earlier the challenge with trust when disappointments show up. You've lived here a long time, Richmond's history. Mm-hmm. America's Healthiest City was started based on the notion that people won't trust someone trying to do something big unless it's more grassroots, unless it's something that people can trust, because there's been so many letdowns. How do you see that evolution? Where do you think we are on that? Yeah. And do you think we can move past this sort of innate distrust, or do you think that's going to live with us forever?
So end of the day, it's human beings working with humans, and humans are the worst part and the best part. It's hard. I think there's distrust in the systems, the practices. Sometimes there's distrust in City Hall, right? And as much progress as our mayor has made, as much progress as his administration has made, there's a lot more progress that has to happen. Sometimes it's you didn't do what you said you're going to do, or you only show up when you're running for something. We don't see you. What you've put in place, that policy, that practice, doesn't reflect what's happening in our lives. You and I, when we're hanging out and talking to each other, we have this great benefit of moving through the world in a particular way. So we might not struggle with the things that a lot of our community struggles with on a daily basis. So do we have perspective? Do we have proximity to the people who are in those conditions? So when that proximity gets too distant, when that empathy is low, it's really hard to lead. And that builds that distrust. I think for me, I've tried to hold on to that empathy, like keep a good proximity, not overpromise, and really center the voice of the person, the group of people that I'm trying to serve. I'm teaching at VCU at the Da Vinci Center. We're all about design thinking, and core part of that, you got to send your customer. It's got to be empathetic, right? And I teach my students that. I try to apply that in my own life. I'm a person-centered engineer. That's how I build systems and solutions, right? So I think if more of us who have the opportunity to lead and to serve, right proximity, right empathy, we got a shot. We're not always going to get it right, but I think people respect that effort. And when you do it in a way that honors them and hears from them and tries to implement what they say, what they want for their community, what's going to make their lives better. A lot of us agree on what we want, right? I want to be safe. I want my kids safe. I want opportunities for good education, good food. I want to enjoy myself, right? We have a lot of the same lists. We might disagree on how to get there, but there's a lot of commonality on what we want. And so I think we've got to just, if we're in a position to lead and serve, you just got to be close to the people you're trying to lead and serve. And
we all want a ballpark, right?
Go Squirrels. Let's get it done. Shovel in the ground.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about ideas for Richmond's future.
Yeah.
You're listening to America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1, part of the Mike King Biz Media Network. If you're not already following us on socials, please subscribe on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Today, we're at Main Street Station with Todd Waldo, the Vice President of the Shockoe Institute, and we're having a great conversation about race, the history of our community, and the future of our community, and the great Shako project that's being planned here. So 2025, you guys will be open.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. You don't have to reveal too much, but I want you to tell us from your perspective, as we look at Richmond's future and the whole region, we have to work together.
Yeah.
What do you see as being our defining moment, for the next 10 years? Like, what is going to be the thing that we get to own that's good?
Yeah. I hope Shockoe Institute is part of that story, that we understand Richmond's role in the trade of enslaved people in a way that we just haven't before, that we are identifying opportunities to do life together differently, and that Richmond models some of that. And so how does the community activist and the administrator and the educator work together towards an outcome? Like, how do we actually do that? That's super hard to do. Richmond is a super relational place, and because of those relationships, that might give us a chance to do that kind of really difficult work. I think institutions like ours have a responsibility to convene people and bring them together. Part of what's great about me doing this work in this season of my life, I'm dreaming about my next moment, my next place. Samaya will graduate high school, I will turn 50, and then we'll see what I do in the world. But I see Shockoe Institute as legacy building work. And so when we have opportunity to do things that are lasting, not just one-offs, but like they're lasting, they get codified, they get concretized, and we build them in a way that we hope it really reverberates out. And that means we have to design it that way. We got to design it with leadership succession. We've got to train up our next generation of leaders. We got to mentor them and pour into them and invest in them. So that can't be something we just hope happens. We got to be really intentional to bring that forward. So I think Richmond's got some cool projects happening, and that'll, I think, create some good experiences for folks. But to solve the big stuff, the affordable housing challenges, transportation, all of those, we gotta do it together. And I think our institutions like ours can help convene people around what's possible, and then try to move some of those things forward.
So I'm curious about how folks can get involved in the Shockoe Institute now before you guys open. Do you have internships that are going to open up? Do you take money from folks?
Yes, the donate button is on the website, shockoeinstitute.org. The website, that is our social as well for Instagram and for LinkedIn. Sign up for our email list so we can tell people about more about ourselves, some of the stories we think we want to talk about, but also where we're showing up and the things that we're doing. So yes, folks can donate, get on the email list. And I think the other thing that I am dreaming about are our partnerships. There are so many great historical assets here. I think we can knit them together a little bit better. We can guide visitors through not just Shockoe Institute, but its connectivity to those other great historical assets. So I'm thinking about who helps us do that. There have been folks in this work for a really long time. So we want to honor those people, honor that work. We're building upon that, which means we want to build with them. And so I think brainstorming about future partnerships is always welcome. And so, collaborating together and making sure we're on the same page about what we're trying to accomplish, I think that can be really powerful.
So one thing that we ask all of our guests, we have an ideas board on americashealthiestcity.com. We like to help other people see that it can be a small idea, it can be a big idea, but there are ways that folks can get involved individually or together to move the needle. Would you be willing to share an idea, small or large, that we can inject into that?
So I did my homework. I went through the site. I scanned through the ideas. And it's, I think it's, I'll bring back what I mentioned before, that across disciplines, the opportunity to pull history forward and understand, like I said, how there is enduring impact that then drives action. But that's based upon the perspective of that artist, that young person, that older person, the person in community, the educator, the engineer, the art, like all those people together across disciplines, understanding how life is impacting them, how is it impacting us collectively, and then what do we do about it? But I think digging into the how across disciplines to then drive policy, to then drive our practices together, I think that could be really interesting. Stuff doesn't just happen, right? And so there's a lot of intention there. And so if we can understand, oh, that's how that happened then, can we make some different choices? Can different people be in the room? Can different folks be involved? Are there things happening in other markets that we can draw from? But I think that's an opportunity for us to be really, really intentional about how we make choices and decisions and drive our policies and practices and do that across disciplines. So
I take that to mean we need to say yes to more meetings.
Good yeses, good yeses and good nos. That's what we got to do.
So another thing that we like to, we get great interviews with folks like you, but asking for referrals to other folks who are doing important work.
It's super easy for me because it's the people I get to work with. And so Marlon Buckner, like I said, the president and CEO of Shockoe Institute, Anjali Moon, dear sister, founder, creative director for Africana, two dope people. Go to Harris, of course, but a housing coalition if you want to talk about that. What we're doing with the Richmond Forum. We got the National Speech and Debate Tournament coming here. So Heather's a great person to talk to. I get to be part of some really, really dope things. So any of those folks are great to talk to. Gary Westlake, Da Vinci Center. We got a new school coming over VCU for our work. So Gary would be great to talk to.
Well, if you keep going, I'll have 2 months of interviews for us, so we'll stop there. And lastly, so that folks can find you out there in the world, what's the best way for folks to contact you?
toddbwaldo.com. That's the website. That is the social. That's where I talk about stuff. Easy.
Well, I'm really grateful for this conversation. I've talked quite a bit about lots of different things, but this is something that I'm excited about. I know a lot of people in Richmond are excited about it, and I'm glad to know that you're part of the leadership team making it happen.
It's an honor to be a part of it.
Well, thanks for sitting with me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This was America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1. Tune in 6 a.m. on the network or on espnrichmond.com. We're also streaming on all of your socials. Catch you next week.